Welcome to Women in B2B Marketing, a show where CMOs, VPs of marketing, and all strong women leaders in B2B discuss their top tactics, strategies, and tips for building high-performing teams, leveraging trends, and ultimately rocking their marketing careers. Made by and for women, insightful for all. I'm your host and 15-year B2B marketer, Jane Serra. Let's dive in. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for an episode of Women in B2B Marketing. Today, we have with us the amazing Kelly Cheng, who is the VP of Marketing at Goldcast. I'm sure you've seen Goldcast out there, so I'm excited to dive into this. And she has a really cool background, 12 plus years of experience in media and marketing that we can dive into, going from the agency world into in-house. But super excited to chat with you today, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jane, for having me.
Yay, I'm pumped to chat. I think I saw a few of your posts on LinkedIn, and you know how the feed works, like people in your network connect with each other, and I see comments, and I just found myself commenting and seeing a lot of the stuff you're posting. Yeah, like that's true. So I was like, we need to get Kelly on the show.
Thinking that because posting on LinkedIn is something that's on my list that I have to do every day, and it's so hard.
Yeah,
and so the positive reinforcement for the posts that I have made means a lot to me.
Yeah, it is so hard sometimes. It's true. I love that you're sticking to once a day. I've been struggling lately. It's hard.
Well, I haven't. I've tried to. I probably post once a week.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. That's more doable. That's what I try to do too at this point. But it is sometimes it feels like you're speaking into a void, right? Because it's so hard if you're not following all of the LinkedIn algorithm rules that you have to stay on top of. It's so crazy. You can't put links and you can't be the first to comment and all these rules.
It's wild, all of the different rules. There's an individual, his name is Mark Jung. He has just like a wealth of knowledge on all of the social media hacks when it comes to LinkedIn. And he did a webinar with us on Goldcast. It's probably our best performing webinar because he just was dropping little gold nuggets everywhere. And did you know that you're not supposed to you're not supposed to put links in your posts? Not until a couple hours you can edit it and add your links, and you won't be dinged for it. And there was a time when you were supposed to comment your links, like you say link in comments, right? And they did something with that now where they hide the links in the comments. And what you have to do now is post a comment without a link and then reply to that comment with the link. It's wild.
Oh my gosh. I told my coworkers, instead of posting, if you share something with a link, have a coworker share the link underneath it as a comment. So it's not you commenting.
Right.
It's such a game, like the whole thing. It's hilarious.
I wonder who that person on LinkedIn is. I'm going to get you, kind of like a whack-a-mole.
Yes. I would love that job. It's like trickery, like marketing trickery. Okay, they figured this out. Now what can I do? And throwing Easter eggs into the mix. So funny. I've actually, if you can send me, if you have the recording of that Goldcast webinar with Mark Jung, that I can link it in show notes too for people to check out. That could be cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Okay. So to take a step back, Kelly, let's learn a little bit about you. If you can tell us how you got into this amazing world of B2B marketing and your career path up until now.
Yeah, so I started my career in college, actually. I knew from an early age that I wanted to be in advertising. And so when I went to school, I picked all of the advertising courses. I majored in communication, really loved it. And all of my internships in school were through advertising agencies. And that just reinforced my love for it. And I think what I loved about advertising, this sounds a little, I don't want this to sound psychotic, but I loved how advertising was this amazing mass communication vessel where it had this incredible influence to the mass population. And I was just so fascinated with the psychology behind it. And so when I got into advertising, I got into media planning, and I did that for 5 years. And on the agency side, it was a grind. I worked across a total of 40 plus different clients, both B2C, B services. I worked on a lot of new business pitches. It was a great experience because within that first 5 years of just fresh graduate, I was able to get in the room with CMOs. I was able to present to CMOs with media plans. Yeah. I just got the skill set that you probably would have to take 15 years to get, all packed into 5 years. And I think it's just super valuable for me. As I walked away from the agency world, I reflected, and I didn't have a life those 5 years. It was such a grind. And I'm sure all the people out there on the agency world can relate and identify. And so from the agency side, I did something I've never done before. And I followed my gut and I did something what I call rage quitting. I quit my
Ooh.
agency job without another job lined up. And that was a huge risk, probably the biggest risk I've ever taken. I'm not a big risk taker. So this was something that was just in the moment. I'm like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to move to San Francisco. So I live in Boston right now, and I lived in Boston then. And so I quit my agency job. I terminated my lease and I said, I'm going to move in with my sister in San Francisco and I'm going to get into tech because
Good for you.
thank you. As I was on the agency side, I was doing media planning, working across all these different clients. Sure, the cool B2C brands, like I worked on McAllen, I worked on Baby Ganix. They were fun, right? They were really exciting and fun. But at the end of the day, when I looked at my B2B portfolio, I noticed there's something really exciting. Like it was the beginning of the 5 years. I was still working on trade publications, print, like actual print magazines that would get delivered to offices. And then something happened where account-based marketing became a bigger thing. It was a terminology that was really just starting. And I really decided to lean into it and really lean into the B2B side because I think that there was a huge gap in terms of innovation and the exciting marketing that we were seeing on the B2C side. And I just knew that there was something that B2B was going to do to catch up. And so I decided to leave my agency job and I moved out to San Francisco and said, I'm going to just go to Silicon Valley and start from the ground up. And that was really challenging. I had probably 6 months of just interviews, first round, second round, third round, homework assignments, fifth round. And I was getting a lot of great interviews, but no job offers. And it was just really demoralizing. As I started to do a little bit more of figuring out what my superpower was and using that to sell to different companies. For me, it was audience building and not just audience building, but knowing the technology on the B2C side and also having a foot in the door on the agency side where you can do a lot of audience building at scale. And so knowing lookalike models, the different ABM tactics who are up and coming really put me in a special position when I'm talking to these B2B tech companies. And so I started my in-house B2B role at a company called PagerDuty. And I was there for about 3 years and worked through their IPO, which was a really exciting time. And really honed in on that audience development, marketing to developers. Again, not very sexy because we're marketing to coders, but actually it's very interesting. They have a very interesting persona and a very different, interesting mindset to sell to. And so I found that very fun and exciting, just really understanding your audience. And I moved to a different company from there, I dipped in my world into marketing to marketers, which is what I do today. And this is the perfect role for me in terms of the audience pool to market to, because I am marketing to people like myself. And so it's been a lot of fun at Goldcast. Previously, I was at Wistia, marketing to different marketers and just continuing that world now.
Yeah, I love that. I wonder, I have a few things I want to dive into from your path here, but in marketing to marketers, I've heard both ends of the spectrum here, that marketing to marketers is like the best and it's so fun because you like get what their pain points are, you're in it. And I've also heard the other side where marketing to marketers is so hard because we see through everything and we know all the tricks in the trade. Which one do you feel it is?
It's both. I completely agree with you. It's so fun because I can just put myself in the marketer's shoes and really say, am I going to respond to this message? If not, let's just cut it, right? And again, marketers catch everything. So I have to be very rigid with my teams. We have to make sure we catch every typo, everything. Marketers notice everything. And so we have to make sure that the bar is high. And so it is definitely a challenge, but it is a good challenge for sure. It's not something that it's not a nut that we can't crack. It's something that just keeps our bar higher.
Yes, I love that. You also touched on, so I come from the agency background too, and I 100% agree with you. It's like a fast forward, like jam-packed 15-year experience into 5 years, right? Everything's just extreme. It's what I recommend anybody graduating college with a degree in marketing or wanting to go into marketing. First thing they should do is check out an agency because you get to learn so much firsthand and see so many different companies and see so many different channels and types of marketing that you get to feel out, do I like marketing? What aspects do I like? What type of company do I like working with? It's a great way to figure all that out. If I could start over, that's what I would do, is start in that way. So I 100% agree. But you mentioned working with 40 plus clients. So instantly right there, I'm thinking you have to be just like super type A organizational genius. And then I saw on your LinkedIn, you mentioned ruthless prioritization and operational excellence are keys to your success. Can you unpack this for us? Where do you begin and what does that really mean for you?
Yes. So something that I, like you mentioned, on the agency side, working across 40 plus clients requires you to just be on top
Yeah,
of it.
you
I would say
have to.
my role at Goldcast today has actually made it even more. So I've definitely
Ooh,
learned the foundation of being super organized and super type A from my agency days. But now it's my first time leading a whole complete global marketing team with millions of dollars in
yeah.
ARR. And how do I stay ruthless in terms of prioritization and have operational excellence? And the way that I look at this is really making sure that the rule of three. So it's three priorities. And this is really from the top down at our organization. I borrow this from our CEO. Every time I meet with him on our one-on-ones, he asks me, what are your top three priorities? And I've brought that to my own management and I ask my department leads, what are your top three priorities? If there's more than three, you're overscoped. It's not possible to have over three large priorities, right, on the marketing side. And so if someone had more than three priorities, we dig deep and say, okay, is this really a priority or is this can be pushed out? Because what we've noticed is if you have a lot of things that you're doing versus few things you're doing, it takes longer to do all of those things and your quality of the output is not as good. So it's better to focus on less things, get them done, and then keep adding things to your list. So really that
Yeah.
prioritization is really important. And that it really is through communication and just really understanding the business. Operational excellence. I am a very process oriented person. I like to tell my founders that I am a strategist and I'm operator. I am not a brand builder. I think in marketing, you have to be very honest with yourselves on those types of things. But the two things that I'm an operator and I'm a strategist. And when I say I'm an operator is that I look at everything through the lens of process. And so when we're working on a campaign, if we have to do 5 of these campaigns, it's what are the key things to scale the output? What kind of automation can we include there? What kind of processes or different SLAs can we make sure that we put in place to make sure that it runs like an engine? And so that's when I say operational excellence and being able to ruthlessly prioritize is really hammering home those two things.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so drawn to people like you that are process focused and type A because I'm so the opposite. I'm like, oh, these big ideas and like I have a messy desk. Like I'm very type B in every way. So I love this. This is amazing to dive into it. I want some of your qualities to rub off on me. But I love the do less, do fewer things so that you can do them better for sure. How long, if you have top 3 priorities, do you give a typical timeline for those 3 or can it vary?
I think it varies depending on the priority. We plan here at Goldcast every 6 months or so, so every 2 quarters. We don't plan, or I don't like to plan for a full year, just because over the last couple of years, market has changed very quickly. And so if you plan a whole year, you're pretty much asking yourselves to replan throughout this upcoming year.
Yeah.
And so right now we have the first 6 months of the fiscal year planned, pending any changes, being flexible in that way. I think that when we have priorities, most of the time they fit pretty squarely into the quarterly plans, but oftentimes it just doesn't. And it's like a ad hoc priority request that comes in. So just being flexible, I think, is super important.
Yeah. Agreed. I love that you only plan 2 quarters ahead. I feel like I just wrapped up our 4-year plan and I'm like, these next 3 years after this, we're going to redo and revisit. But this is how I envision it because you just never know. Like you said, the past 3 years.
Yeah, that we do have to plan ahead is events. And at events is something that we are doubling down in-person events. And because of that, event schedules come out a year in advance. And so we definitely make that part of it. We do have to plan ahead.
Yeah. Speaking of events, I'm curious, obviously with Goldcast being a virtual event platform, how do you see the mix of in-person and virtual events nowadays? Is there a split to the two? I'm assuming from what you just said, the need for both in your plan.
So I want to take a step back too. I think Goldcast was founded 4 years ago, and we really dove into the event space because that's what the need was in the market.
Yeah.
You know, during the pandemic, everybody needed to move their in-person user conferences online. But over the last couple of years, we have pivoted and transitioned. And today, and what we're building is Goldcast is an end-to-end video marketing platform, and we help teams put video at the heart of their go-to-market strategy. Because when you're thinking about virtual events, webinars, those are all videos essentially.
Yeah.
And so really helping marketers really see that through a video lens, because once you see it in a video lens, that asset becomes that much more flexible, because we help marketers maximize that video content in 4 different ways. So first is creating through that webinar and being able to produce that experience very effectively. And then we help them repurpose. So we've got an AI solution called Content Lab that uses AI to help turn that video into many different assets. So we transcribe it and we summarize it, and then you can prompt it to say, turn this webinar into a blog post focusing on these keywords. And the possibilities are really limitless when it comes to that. And after that, we help marketers engage and nurture. We help them embed these videos on their website. And then finally, we help them measure. So really track the direct impact on pipeline and revenue. So it's really an end-to-end flywheel of video content.
Yeah.
And because of that, this repositioning that we're going through and making sure that people see us not just as events, but more as an entire end-to-end video platform for B2B events is really important, because we have to go and tell our story on a stage and not just host our own events, which are great. That's a huge part of our go-to-market strategy, is engaging our own database and bringing on new people onto the Goldcast platform, experiencing our webinars, but also going into larger, newer markets where we're diving into the financial services industry and really making a mark there. We'd have to show up at the places where these audiences are. And so that's why we have this dual virtual and in-person event strategy. And what we've actually seen work really well at like larger conferences where I don't have a massive budget. I wish I had more of a budget, but the reality is that I have what I have. What's been really effective is hosting these more intimate field events around the larger conference. So say if I'm going to Inbound or if I'm going to Dreamforce, I'm not going to put a booth there because that's going to cost me like at least $80K, but I might host like a dinner that's going to cost me $15K. And that's going to get me just as much of an engagement in terms of with my relationships with my leads and my ICP. So that's a strategy that we've seen work really well.
So smart. Yeah. I think it's almost as if because of the past few years, everybody's been more virtual, which I'm all for. I don't think I could ever be an in-office person again, but we're also craving that one-to-one human connection of live events. So I'm seeing them uptick a lot in all industries, but I love I'm doing the same thing at Daxtra, where outside of the events, like getting a booth, A, it's super expensive. B, they're not working the way they used to because people don't want to spend time walking through booths and getting sold to. They want to be networking with people, and they do that outside of where the trade show booths typically are. So definitely external bespoke events seem to be the wave of, not even the future, the wave of now, what people are doing.
Totally. And I think marketing teams should definitely look at their full list of events where they might be interested, have that short list ready, do some back channeling, talk to some of the other marketers that may have sponsored or attended these events and get some feedback on whether or not it's worth it. Because more often than not, it's not worth it, and not worth it to have a booth at least. Maybe worth it to send a couple of hunters to attend. But I think it definitely, the world where before you had this massive line item in your budget for events and you just spend, I think that's over. We have to be much more selective in where we put our efforts in.
Yes. So 2 things of working in a space that's marketing to marketers, right? Number 1, I think the biggest benefit is that you get to test your own tool. So you can see the value of it and leverage it for free, right? You get to use your own tool and know how great it is, which is just huge, a huge win. And second, just so marketing is always, from my perspective, it's like B2C marketing and then B2B marketing to marketers is like the right underneath B2C, because it's always like the top of the top doing the most innovative things. And then there's the rest of us in B2B marketing, right? And we learn from the B2B marketers marketing to marketers who learn from B2C. So there's just so much insight that you can learn being in that space too when you're marketing to marketers.
Yeah, thanks for that framework. I never really saw like marketing to marketers as like the layer between B2B and B2C, but you're absolutely right. It is.
So innovative. That's where the B2B influencers, for example, first starting in companies that are like tech for marketers and go-to-market teams. It's just really cool. And like the video side, which I'm sure you're working with influencers because it goes hand in hand, right? With the video creation.
For sure. I think the traditional ways of marketing is just not working anymore. Yeah. And that's a big thing at Goldcast where we believe that B2B marketing is going through a really fundamental shift. And over the next couple of years, And I think what's shifting is number one, traditional funnel is not working. Like I think there's so many stats out there. I think Forrester put out that like 75% of B2B buying happens before anyone even talks to sales. Like you've pretty much made up your mind before you get a demo form. Because the reality is that there are so many vendors out there, like hundreds, but in your minds, you can only hold maybe 4 or 5. And okay, I'm in market for a chatbot solution. I already know Drift. I already know Qualify. I already know the brands that I respect and know about. And that's what we're calling Mindshare. And we're going to help marketers build Mindshare at Goldcast. And that's where you just have to be everywhere all at once, like that movie. But it's so impossible to do that, to like just be everywhere all at once. Like you have to be on a podcast, you have to do a webinar, you have to be in person, you have to have these videos, you have to work with these influencers. It's crazy. And so we help marketers basically streamline all of that and do that efficiently with AI, because we think that with video, like that recording a podcast or a webinar, that's really authentic. You're getting some expert insights from a human being that's not AI generated. And from that source video, you can turn it into a blog post. You can turn it to a chapter in an ebook. You can turn it into so many different things. And so that's how you really build Mindshare, is really find those authentic sources of content and then really amplify it through the different channels that are out there on marketing.
Yeah, I love that focus on Mindshare.
Hot take here is that, not saying that intent signals are dead, but I do think that intent signals have become a lagging indicator. Because if you're marketing around intent signals only, and you're going to start your advertising only when this person's in market to buy, you've pretty much lost already, because they've already pretty much made up their minds. I think it's every marketing leader's nightmare to have some account on their target account list, RFP, and then you're not on that RFP list because you're not part of their mind share. And so that's something that I'm really passionate about helping different marketing teams really figure out, is to how do you get into that short list for all of your target accounts?
Yep. That's such a good point. How do you get on the short list? And I feel like right now, everybody is so focused on signals. It's the hot word in marketing right now. And we have to be right. We have to watch what signals we have access to, but what signals are greatly expanding to and which ones we can look at. But it is really important to look at which ones are. There's some platforms that give you intent signals and then you call them and they're like, oh, no, we already closed that RFP. It's, but we just got this intent signal like 6 months later. Exactly. So definitely that would be lagging, core definition of it. What else do you see working right now for marketing, and especially in B2B?
So I mentioned strategic events. That's really working well for us. We experimented with that this past year. We're going to do a lot more of that in 2025. Something else that's really working for us is AI-powered outbound. And so recently, we did move our BDR team under the marketing umbrella. So the BDR team has historically been under the sales umbrella, and we moved it over to marketing for a few reasons. The way that the BDR team is structured here at Goldcast is that they outbound to mid-market and enterprise accounts only, and they also respond to inbound. So if we get like a webinar attendee that is a marketing qualified lead, they would reach out to that individual. And so because of that lead follow-up cadence that the BDR teams are responsible for, what we were seeing prior when they were on the sales side, that we were just disconnected. Like teams weren't talking to each other. Meetings were falling off the calendar. We were noticing that follow-up wasn't as strong as it should be, and really tried to figure out why it is. Because the teams aren't that big, and we're all remote, which comes with its own communication challenges. The teams aren't that large where we all should still be talking to each other every single day. Yeah. And just moving structurally the BDR team over to marketing, and so has created this magical experience where everyone's just talking to each other. Now that we're on the same team, we all have the same goal. Every time we have a webinar, there's a lot of chatter going around about it. And so it's really exciting to see all the momentum and energy get created from a single shift of a team structure. And that's something that, as a marketing leader and always looking at how my team org should be structured, I never really thought of how a simple dotted line or a change of a line direction might help with communication, and that just unlocks so many things. But that's something that we definitely saw. But going back to outbound, AI-powered outbound, we're leveraging newer tools like Clay to scrape for information, to be more intelligent in the way that in prioritizing who we reach out to. So we're not spraying and praying everybody with the same message. We're being more personalized, and we're also collecting like more first-party data or unique data points that help us refine our ICP and the way that we speak to them. One way that we're doing this is we're scraping YouTube. So looking at our target account list, going to all of their YouTube channels and really seeing how many videos do they have on their YouTube channel, because we want to prioritize those that have more video, because they're investing in video.
Are you leveraging Clay to do the scraping, to scrape YouTube, or is something else doing that?
So we're using another tool to scrape it, but Clay is how we collect all the
Yeah.
information to then operationalize it.
Cool. Very interesting. So it helps you prioritize which parties to go after with that extra data point.
Correct. Yes.
Love that. I know that I've spoken to Casey from Sendoso before about leveraging Clay and like the AI outbound. Yeah. It seems to be a really smart move. How are you keeping on top of AI and what nuances could come out that are not appropriate or things that, because AI is still learning. Are you letting it run or training and giving feedback? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think it's really important to give feedback because I think Sarah McConnell from Qualified had said this to me. AI is like an intern. You can't just let your intern run wild. You have to make sure that you give your intern the right training and structure and support and feedback. And I see it a very similar way where we have a Slack channel where we get all of the responses from our inbound AI tool. Cool. It's been really interesting seeing some of the responses because sometimes we don't get it right completely and we get a response back. And it's really important for a human to respond back and make sure that we correct the issue and then go back to the tool to make the adjustments. But it's very off-putting when you realize it's a robot that's emailing you. And so that's something we definitely want to make sure that it's always a positive experience, even though that's what happened. So someone, for example, responded back and said that, oh, I actually went through the sales opportunity already and we picked another solution. Heartbreaking. It's important for us to respond back. It's like, oh, so sorry, our data must have been confused or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you bake in like a pause then that gives it time before it automatically replies itself, the AI SDR, or how do you know when to step in?
Yeah. So what happens with our tool is that we send out, so our AI tool sends emails out. Any responses actually go into a real person's inbox. So one of our BDR's team will have to then respond.
Got it. Okay. So it's the initial outreach that's AI,
Correct.
But then it's all follow up by a real person if someone responds.
Correct.
Very cool. Okay. That makes more sense. On the flip side, and then I want to dive more into that BDR shift because there's a lot to unpack there too. But on the flip side of what is working, is there anything, we touched on this a little bit with like marketing has shifted and the old way doesn't work anymore. What examples can you give of, or what are you just done with and is not working anymore in marketing?
It's hard for me to answer this because I was thinking about this, but it's not so much there's any tactic that isn't working anymore, but more so the tactic needs to be evolved. So what I'm looking at, let's say like I'm looking at my budget. We're spending on Google search, we're spending on LinkedIn, we're spending on Facebook. Like the budget number is consistent. Like we're spending 20K every month or whatever that number is. But I think it's important to double click into the 20K that you're spending every month and say, what exactly are you spending on? Because it's so easy for these campaigns to just run on their own without much oversight because they self-optimize, right? And so there's always these new placements to be using, like LinkedIn, for example. Single image ads I think everyone has like blinders on when it comes to ads. And so when you have an ad that's really obvious, that's an ad, people just don't even look at it or don't even see it anymore. But thought leadership ads are very hot right now. They're very popular. They're very successful and effective because they look like an advertorial. And you wouldn't know to run those placements unless you're very much into the day-to-day of, okay, let's look at what's going on with LinkedIn advertising. And so it's not any particular channel or tactic that I think I'm just done with, but it's more so, I think, lazy marketing. I think Kieran Flanagan actually talks about lazy marketers on the AI side of it. I'm talking more about it, how you're just letting things go on autopilot. And I think that gone are the days where, your budget and your resources are just too precious for anything to go on autopilot.
We're still in the era of do more with less, right? I don't know if that's ever going away. It's not even an era anymore. It's just the way it is. So
it's reality.
We can't. It's just permanent. But it's interesting. We can't, not that we ever would have wanted to set it and forget it, although that used to be, you come from the agency world, that used to be how campaigns were run. Like an agency would come in and that's how you would lose business to another agency, is because they would come in and see, oh, like this is just on autopilot and it's not working. There's all these things we could do. Now nobody at all can afford to do that because we have to be performing and getting this ROI and everything is under a microscope. Okay, so I want to go back to BDR function going under marketing. So what sparked that opportunity and that idea? And what have you learned from it so far? Is there any tips you would have who should consider this or who should not consider this move?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a little disclaimer here is that I'm still learning. This is very new. We transitioned the BDR team over to marketing in October, so it's been 2 months. And so far, it has been the right decision. And I'll talk through a little bit about why we made this decision. And I said this a little bit before already, but we were looking at the data, and the BDR team's key responsibilities are two-pronged. First is outbounding to mid-market and enterprise, really prioritizing our target accounts. And those outbound messaging is very much tied to marketing. It's marketing messaging. And so that's number one, what they're responsible for. Number two is to follow up on leads and leads that engage with our marketing campaigns and activities that are deemed marketing qualified. And that follow-up requires context on what the marketing activity was and all that. And so because both of the BDR's roles, the two key responsibilities that the BDRs hold are so connected to marketing, it felt natural for the BDR team to not just report to marketing. Actually, it felt natural for the BDR team to not just have a dotted line to marketing, but just fully be under marketing ownership because of the context selling that it requires. It really needs to have our BDRs really understand our ICP very well, how we position our products. We really need to have our teams really understand the campaigns that we have in market and why we have these campaigns in market. And when people interact with them, what that means for that person. Because of the disconnect on having the BDR on a separate team, we just weren't talking. It was very much like an invisible wall where like we knew, like the marketing team knew that the BDR team was there, that they were doing the follow-ups, but there was some kind of barrier that prevented a marketing manager from going across the aisle and saying, I need this. Please do this, help me with this, give me feedback for this. That conversation, that exchange wasn't happening. And it was just until we moved the team under marketing umbrella and we had our first marketing team meeting kickoff and everybody saw each other's faces and we were all on the same team and had one single goal of pipeline generation. Everyone on the marketing team is responsible for pipeline generation. That's when we really saw like individuals started to work with each other more autonomously. It's funny because as a marketing leader, oftentimes I feel like I'm like just a parent at trying to get kids to play with each other at playgroup. And it's just happening organically and naturally. And it's just really, it's a beautiful thing for me to see.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like it was the bridge that you needed between sales and marketing. Oh, that's perfect. One question I have that comes up because when I bring up this idea with any salespeople that don't currently have BDRs under marketing, their first question is, but what about their career path? Like BDRs typically become BDRs to then go into sales to become AEs. So how do they feel about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so at Goldcast, our leadership team, our go-to-market leadership team, our leadership team in general, go-to-market leadership team in particular is very closely connected. We talk every day. And so we're scoping out new roles. Like currently we're looking to hire account executives at Goldcast. We're having conversations to are any BDRs ready to interview for those types of positions. So we're still making sure that there is that career path of making sure that if BDRs want to move into that AE role, that path is available. But there's also another path on the marketing side. We had a BDR on the team that's currently working under the growth marketing team. She's a growth specialist, really helping with our product-led growth flywheel. And so really opening up the different career channels and paths that BDRs can take.
It gives them more options because it's harder once you become an AE to go backwards into marketing. It's still doable, but it's harder. And this way you get to expose to more. So it widens their paths.
It's actually really funny. At Goldcast, we've had multiple people from the sales team move under the marketing umbrella. We've had a junior AE move into our field and event marketing. And so it's a very fluid, transitional organization.
Yeah, I love that. Very cool. So always thinking about your employees' growth.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned you don't plan for the whole year outside of events, but for 2025 or H1 2025, what's top of mind for you? What do you think is going to shift? Or as you were doing that planning, what kept coming up in your mind?
So I think every marketing leader is going to approach 2025 differently, depending on the where you are in the journey of the brand and the company. Where we are at Goldcast right now is that next year is going to be a pretty big year for us when it comes to our brand. And so that's something that we are looking to invest in. So running brand campaigns, really making sure that we show up in the caliber that we want to be selling towards, because we do market to the mid-market and enterprise. And feedback that I've gotten from just the market in general is that people are often surprised that Goldcast has only been around for 4 years and that we are only Series A. And that's something I take a lot of pride in, because what I really try to do is make the brand feel bigger than it is. And the way that we've done that is just honestly pumping out content, making sure that we're everywhere, really dog fooding this whole Mindshare marketing belief that we have. And so next year is going to be really big on that, making sure that we double down on our brand marketing, but also making sure that we champion the whole idea of Mindshare marketing.
Yeah. Love that. And I saw that you were hiring for, I think, a director of content or director of brand and content. I see that. When you're hiring for such a role, what are things that you are keeping in mind? Or maybe you already hired? I don't know the status of it.
So I'm currently deep into the hiring pipeline. And what I'm looking for in this role is someone that has a track record in excellent content strategy and brand development. Like I said before, I am very honest with myself. I am a strategist and I am an operator, not a brand builder. And so I'm looking to bring on a brand builder in this director of brand and content, someone that can feel comfortable on camera, because it's really important to be at Goldcast is to be on video, but someone that's just really empowered and passionate about marketing to marketers and the charter that Goldcast is setting out for. Mindshare marketing is a huge thing that we want to push forward and make sure everybody understands. And when I'm looking to hire for a director of brand and content, making sure that the Mindshare marketing angle aligns with their personal belief is very important.
Yeah. Love that. Are there also things that as you've built out your team that you've kept in mind, just key hires and understanding that's a fit and just how you're building out your team? Anything you're keeping in mind on soft skills wise or outside of specific skill sets?
So that's a really great question. I think when I'm looking for hiring, I've hired a couple of key roles here at the marketing team at Goldcast. Experience is fine. It's great to see all the accolades and the companies that people have worked for. It definitely gives reinforcement, that social proof that you need. But when I'm speaking to candidates and really trying to dig into, gets them excited, what motivates them, what keeps them up at night, I think it's really important it's more so the attitude of the individual, whether or not they're daunted by challenges or if they're excited by challenges. It's really figuring out what gets the person ticking and going. Because I think that's really how, as a manager and a team leader, you can really bring the right people together. So then we all move forward on the same mission. Because people are built differently, motivated differently. And it's when you bring the right group together, it can be really magical.
Yeah, so true. That's really what interviewing for culture means, right? Like understanding not getting the same kind of person in. You want diversity in every way, shape, or form, but being able to have that same mindset that matches the company's goals at the end of the day.
Correct. And I think, like I mentioned, when I was going through like my interview journey, pivoting from agency side to in-house, it was really frustrating. I think I did like upwards of 20 different homework assignments. And I'm really anti-homework assignments and interview processes. Not that I don't see them valuable, but I do believe that if you're going to be asking someone to do a homework assignment that's going to take an extended time, if it's going to be 3 hours, compensate them for that time, but also make sure that it's not just a box that you're checking, like they did the assignment. So I previously had been hiring for a director of growth. And the direction I decided to go in for this interview for the homework assignment was more of a panel discussion. So what I did was I put together a 1-pager of a challenge that we're having. And I said, okay, on this day, you're going to be leading a discussion and you're going to have a product leader and a sales leader in the room with you. And that's really what we're looking for, is how you work together and how you think. And that really helped us decide the right fit.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's more of a use case situation, like throwing them in, seeing how, like a sample on both sides to see how everybody meshes.
No presentations. Think about the problem and come and to lead a discussion.
I love that. I might adopt that myself, because sometimes the projects feel so forced, but you feel like you need some kind of sample, and that's a much better sample. Like, how can we brainstorm together? How can we solve this problem? Love that.
And really leveraging
cool.
your interview panel for their feedback. If you just get an assignment back, you're not really getting much feedback from the rest of the panel. And I value so much my peers on the sales side and the CS side. I want to make sure that I collect that feedback. And so having that space to hold that discussion is really important to me.
Yes. Very cool. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
If you can go back to Kelly, back in your college days, knowing you wanted to go into marketing and advertising, just starting out in the agency world, what's one thing that you would tell your younger self today, knowing all that you've been through?
So I think if I were to go back, and I graduated at a time where it was really tough to get a job, really, you just can't be picky and choosy. And I think that we're at a similar time right now.
Yep.
What I would have focused more on is, rather than just get all the tactics out and just doing all the work, spend more time looking for mentors, because that's something that I didn't do early in my career. I didn't build the rapport with my managers, and it was really very transactional. I would say to myself, spend more time building that relationship, because that's really how you're going to get that long-term success. And that's something I wish I did more of. And I'm doing a lot more now.
Love that. I'm going to ask a follow-up then. How are you doing that now?
So how I'm doing this is just making sure that I block time on my calendar. I say this to my team all the time. If you don't manage your calendar, we'll manage you.
Yes.
And so what I do is I do a lot of calendar blocking. I'm a big fan of the tool Clockwise if you're not using it, but it helps me set time apart so I can go on LinkedIn and DM people, message people, have coffee chats every so often. Because if I don't have that time blocked, it's just, I'm in back-to-back meetings from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and it's just impossible to do anything but work. And so I do think that it's important to set aside time and block your calendars and manage your calendar so it doesn't manage you.
Love that. And respect your time blocks. That's my biggest struggle. I'll quickly be like, yeah, you can schedule over that. That's not a big, it's okay. So don't do what I do, everyone. Love that. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us. This has been such a fun chat. I have a ton of advice that I'm going to take myself. I love that tip for interviews where you're not giving somebody a project that takes them days to do, that you're not compensating them for. It's just a real test case for both sides. Thank you for sharing everything with us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And Kelly, if everybody wants to connect with you, is the best place to find you on LinkedIn or anywhere else?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay. I'll put links in show notes to a few things that we talked about today, including Kelly's LinkedIn. So quick access. But thank you, everyone, for listening. If you like the show, give us a review, a rating, share with a friend, and connect with us on LinkedIn. See you all next time.
Bye.